Welcome to this newsroom, 45 minutes news presentation about Liberia, Africa, and the rest of the world. Today is Wednesday, October 22nd, 2025, and I'm Newton to representing stories we're following this evening. Liberia Drug Enforcement Agency arrests a 23-year-old woman in connection with the sale of kush at the Douala market on Bushrock Island. LDA says the suspect is undergoing investigation at its headquarters. Campus-based student unification party at the University of Liberia petitions the Ministry of Youth and Sports to immediately suspend all activities related to the upcoming elections of the Federation of Liberian Youth following allegations of institutional malpractices. The House of Senate announces plan at the People's Republic of China to fund the renovation of the joint chambers of the Capitol building and several legislative offices that were affected during the December arson attack. Away from Liberia, top opposition politician arrested days before Tanzania election. These plus the news bulletin, our international developments are all packaged, but we are taking a very short break. We will be right back. Thanks for rejoining. At this juncture, we join Sam Andrews with the news bulletin.
The Liberia Drug Enforcement Agency has arrested a 23-year-old woman in connection with the sale of illegal drug known as kush at the Bush Douala market on Bushrock Island. The operation, conducted by LDA Department of Operations, was led by Assistant Commissioner of Police Patrick Kamanzu. The arrest occurred on Sunday at approximately 6:45. The suspect, identified as Deconti Gray, a resident of Samokatine in Corwell, was allegedly found in possession of kush with an estimated street value of $20,000. Gray is currently in LDA custody as investigation continues. The authorities have indicated that she will be formally charged and forwarded to court upon the completion of the investigative process. The campus-based Student Unification Party at the University of Liberia has petitioned the Ministry of Youth and Sports to suspend all activities relative to the upcoming elections of the Federation of Liberian Youth FLA. The students' movement call comes amid growing tension within the national youth body following allegations of constitutional violations and administrative malpractices. Speaking with journalists Wednesday in Monrovia, Chairman for Propaganda Emmanuel Poliyam stated that the party's call for suspension of FLA election is in response to mounting concern about the credibility of the electoral process. He alleges that the electoral committee overseeing FLA election has been compromised, which undermines the integrity of the democratic process. Senate Pro Tem Yomli Kanga Lawrence has announced that China has agreed to fund the renovation of the damaged joint chambers of the Capitol building and several legislative offices. The announcement was made Tuesday at the Senate. Pro Tem Kanga Lawrence said the commitment was secured during a high-level meeting with Zhao Lei, chair of the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress legislative body and the third most senior leader in China's Communist Party. According to her, she requested China to repair the joint chambers that was burned and renovate offices at the capital. The National Elections Commission of Liberia, through the Operations Department, has commenced the periodic maintenance of the biometric voter registration kit. The exercise is being carried out by NEC staff who were previously trained as BVR technicians. Civil Service Agency has launched the automated legal power of attorney scheme into a digital, streamlined process, removing barriers, eliminating delays, and restoring confidence in public service delivery. Speaking on behalf of President Boakai, Ambassador Charles Snater emphasized the government's commitment to modernizing public system and restoring dignity and efficiency within the civil service. Ambassador Charles Snater recalled a time when government employees offer a reliable path to empowerment public service nurses, administrators, and security officers were able to build homes, support their families, and serve with pride and dignity. The executive director of the National Commission on Disabilities in Liberia, Sam Dane, has termed the allegations levied against him by some visually impaired persons as false, malicious, and politically motivated. On Tuesday, several visually impaired persons staged a protest in Monrovia calling for the dismissal of Sam Dane as CEO of the National Commission on Disabilities for his involvement into financial malpractices and mismanagement. Addressing a news conference in Congo Town at the headquarters of the National Commission on Disability Wednesday, Sam Dane denied all allegations made against him by members of the commission. According to him, there were no personal donation from President Bouacar, while noting that the funds in question were allocated through the public sector investment program by the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning to support the National Commission on Disabilities Economic Empowerment Grant Scheme. The executive director of the National Commission That's the same development organization has announced the observance of the 31st Sami Massacre Memorial Day program scheduled for October 26 to the 27 in Sami Town, Bon County. The Sami Massacre Memorial Day is commemorated annually on October 27 to honor and remember the citizens of Sami who were gruesomely killed during Liberia's Civil War. The Liberia National Red Cross, in collaboration with the Ministry of Health, have trained 20 dedicated volunteers to spearhead awareness campaigns in Grand Bassa County. The initiative aims to educate communities on the prevention and transmission of the disease, the monkeypox, making it a significant step in public health effort. Dr. Prince Bestman of the Liberia National Red Cross provided an overview of the training, emphasizing its purpose to enhance the skills and knowledge of volunteer stocks with disseminating crucial information about mpox disease. President Joseph Boakai recent veto of 11 local bills has generated mixed views amongst Liberians. Some believe the move by the president will deny the local government of certain constitutional rights and obligations, while others think the decision is in the right direction. Amid these different views, InfoQuest Liberia has lauded President Boakai for what it termed as courageous and principled decision to veto the 11 controversial local government bills. The House of Representatives recently passed 9 bills calling for the establishment of 9 townships in Nimba County and 2 new districts in Nimba and Lofa counties. Ahead of United Nations 80th anniversary, UN resident coordinator in Liberia, Christine Omotoni, reaffirmed the United Nations' continued commitment to supporting Liberia's development priorities. The UN resident coordinator highlighted both notable progress and ongoing challenges in Liberia's journey toward achieving these sustainable development goals. She informed reporters at the Ministry of Information about notable achievements in reducing under 5 mortality, increasing access to clean water, and expanding school feeding programs, terming Liberia's SDG index as moderate but with marked progress. She acknowledged persistent development gaps, including poverty reduction, gender equality, infrastructure development, and climate resilience. Reflecting on the ongoing cooperation between United Nations and the Liberian government, Madam Omontoni noted that current cooperation framework centered around 4 key pillars: human development and essential services, sustainable economic development, peace and security, and good governance, in her words, are essential. Chief Justice Yamin Gbese has released his legal assignment for the November term of court. Judge Gbese assigned criminal codes B, C, and E and D, as well as 5th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 12th, and 15 judicial codes. A presidential aspirant in the upcoming elections of the Reporters Association of Liberia, Barclay Conley, has pledged to audit the institution's past leadership if elected. Mr. Conley said the proposed audit is part of a broader initiative aimed at promoting transparency and accountability within the organization. Speaking on King's FM Wednesday, Conley outlined his team's reform agenda, which he believes is essential for institutional advancement of the Reporters Association of Liberia. He criticized both past and current leaders of the association for allegedly neglecting the welfare of journalists across the country. According to Conley, such alleged neglect, along with persistent accusations of corruption, has contributed to what he described as a serious constitutional crisis within the Reporters Association of Liberia. He vowed to decentralize the association operations in other parts of the country to ensure greater inclusion and representation of rural reporters. And the Education Development Center, in collaboration with the Ministry of Education and the MasterCard Foundation, has begun a 3-day discussion aimed at transforming, strengthening, and training of leaders in the secondary education sector. Speaking at the opening of the discussion, Education Minister Jaso Malik disclosed that the project, entitled Leaders in Teaching Liberia, is aimed at building a high quality and sustainable education system that prepares Liberian youth with knowledge and skills needed for long life learning, employment, and adult life. According to the education minister, the partnership will put in place a strategic program that will reach directly 9,000 teachers, 3,200 school leaders, and indirectly impact several students throughout the country. Also speaking, the project director of Education Development Center, Ahmed Dil, said the project marks an important development aimed at giving teachers and school administrators the necessary knowledge and skills for preparing Liberian youth for a good livelihood.
Sam Andrews Swift News Bulletin. What if you just joining us? A reminder, you're listening to King's News Broom, a 45 minutes news presentation about Liberia, Africa, and the rest of the world. Stories will follow in this evening. The Liberia Drug Enforcement Agency arrests a 23-year-old woman in connection with a sale of kush at the Dwalat Market on Bushra Island. LDA says the suspect is on ongoing investigation at its headquarters. Campus-based student unification party at the University of Liberia petitions the Ministry of Youth and Sports to immediately suspend all activities related to the upcoming elections of the Federation of Liberian Youth following allegations of institutional malpractices. The House of Senate announced its plan by the People's Republic of China to fund the renovation of the Joint Chamber of the Capitol building and several legislative offices that were affected during the December arson attack. Away from Liberia, top opposition politician arrested days before Tanzania election. And dozens killed in Nigeria, fuel tanker explosion. These are stories following here this evening. But we are taking a very short break. When we come back, we'll bring you the voices of the newsmakers. Thanks for rejoining. On our first development here this evening, the campus-based student unification party at the University of Liberia has formally petitioned the Ministry of Youth and Sports to immediately suspend all activities related to the upcoming elections of the Federation of Liberian Youth. The students' movement call comes amid growing tensions within the national youth body following allegations of constitutional violations and administrative malpractices by FLA's current leadership. Speaking with journalist Wednesday in Monrovia, SUP's chairman for propaganda Emmanuel Polinya stated that the party called for the suspension of FLA's election is in response to mounting concerns about the credibility of the electoral process.
Of the Student Unification Party, that the leadership of President Braninka is introducing a tendency or have introduced a tendency that completely contradicts and violates the norms, the standards, the precedents, and the doctrine at the Federation of Liberia's Youth. As you are all aware, FLA is going to an election that is considered as a major election. These elections that is ongoing, the processes leading to these elections is unconstitutional, and there are multiple irregularities. On the basis of this, we are summoned today at the Ministry of Youth and Sport to inform the Ministry of Youth and Sport and the government of Liberia that they should put effectively, immediately siege or halt on the ongoing electoral processes conducted by Braninka Williams or independent elections commissions or committee. The reasons we are saying this is because the tenureship of Braninka Williams elapsed today. Nowhere in any democratic space will one preside over an executive committee when you are constitutionally illegitimate. What guarantees power, what guarantees the tenets of democracy is the observance and the obedience of constitutional tenets. What Braninka is exhibiting, she's exhibiting a posture and a tendency that she is a dictatorial and a totalitarian person. For the fact that her tenureship as president of the Federation of Liberian Youth has elapsed, and she is still parading, mandating the Independent Elections Commission that is concerned to pursue with elections activities within the Federation of Liberia's Youth to raise signal to all partners, stakeholders, shareholders, and all young people in this country that Liberia and the young people future under Braninka is at stake, and this is a troubling sign for democracy in future years. The Federation of Liberia's Youth should be the watchdog.
He's SUP propaganda chairman Emmanuel Poli there speaking. Civil Service Agency has launched automated legal power of Antonin scheme into digital streamlined process, removing barriers, eliminating delays, and restoring confidence in public service delivery. Speaking on behalf of President Joseph Walker, Ambassador Charles Nuttall emphasized the administration's commitment to modernizing public systems and restoring dignity and efficiency within civil service. Ambassador Nuttall recalled a time when the government employment offered a reliable path of empowerment public that's empowering public servants, nurses, administrators, and security officers were able to build homes, support their families, and serve with pride and dignity.
Today we gather not merely to launch a digital platform, but to rekindle a legacy of empowerment, trust, and dignity for every public servant in Liberia. Before the dark years of our civil conflict, the legal power of attorney, the LPA team stood as a powerful symbol of the government's care for its employees. It gave teachers, nurses, administrators, security officers, the means to build homes, furnish them with pride, support their families with dignity. Civil servants simply presented the government identification cards, selected the items they needed, and repaid over time with no down payments, no humiliation, and no bureaucracy made. This initiative did more than provide goods. It built lives, strengthened families, and inspired loyalty to public service. It was a cornerstone of motivation and a major temperament factor for the civil service. Sadly, after the war, that vision was lost. For decades, the LPA scheme, once a bright empowerment, remained dormant or inaccessible to the very people it was created to serve. Fellow Liberians, today marks the end of that long wait. Today, I stand before you to declare that a new day has come for all government work. My administration through the civil service and the agency has transformed and automated the legal power of attorney. The process, once tedious and frustrating, has been redesigned into a modern, digitalized, and efficient system that removes barriers and restores confidence. Under the new arrangements, each government employee will biometrically enroll through fingerprint identification. Vendors' participation in the LPA program will be equipped with customized LPA point of sale, the POS verification machines. Employees will simply walk any approved LPA store, verify their identity, pick up their goods without down payment, and walk out with tickets.
It added that the new system will focus on key features of the new scheme, which include biometric enrollment, employees register using fingerprint verification to ensure secure and accurate identification, immediate access to goods once approved. Employees can collect items without down payments. Ambassador Snyder noted that the automated system exemplifies the administration's broader goals for financial inclusion, operational efficiency, and respect for the nation's public workforce. He reaffirmed President Bwaka's unwavering dedication to civil service reform, noting that the initiative is like the automated power of Antony's scheme. It is critical to rebuilding trust and credibility in public institutions. Meanwhile, Ambassador Snelton highlighted government's commitment to reform at launch of the civil service automated legal power of Antony's scheme.
Fellow Liberians, this program covers all government employees, civil servants, and appointed officials alike. It is a model of financial inclusion, efficiency, and respect for the workforce. Transformation programs form part of my ground government border reform and modernization agenda for public service. On July 4, 2024, we launched the Employee Status Registration Regularization Project, the ESRP, a national payroll verification and cleanup exercise. I assured civil servants that we will not only clean the system, but also improve their welfare. I am proud to report that we have kept that promise. Today, no civil servant earned less than $150 US. We have implemented the salary top-up initiative for more than 23,000 essential workers across the health, education, security, and agriculture sectors. This is not just a policy, it is a moral commitment to fairness and equality for those who serve our nation. Our commitment to fairness and inclusion goes beyond digital reform. It is extended to the very heart of human dignity, the right of every worker to be recognized and rewarded for their service. For many years, thousands of Liberians have labored selflessly in classrooms and health facilities across our nation, teaching our children, tending to the sick, and supporting community health delivery without a single paycheck. These are long-serving volunteers, teachers, nurses, and health workers who kept Liberia's social sector alive through unimaginative hardship while they work. This insensitive treatment has now come to an end. Under my administration, the government of Liberia, through a multi-sectoral collaboration involving the civil service agency, the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning, the Ministry of Health, and the Ministry of Education.
He's Ambassador Charles Senator. Yes, speaking. Liberia Senate Pro Tempore Yombli Kankalari has announced that China has agreed to fund the renovation of the fire-damaged joint chamber of the Capitol building and several legislative offices. The announcement was made Tuesday, October 21st, 2025, during the opening remarks of the 44th day sitting of the Senate's second section of the 55th legislature following her return for an official visit to Beijing, China. The Senate Pro Tem Lawrence said the commitment was secured during the high-level meeting with Zhao Linjin, chairman of the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress, China's legislative body, and the third most senior leader in the Chinese Communist Party hierarchy. According to her, the dinner meeting was requested by China to support the repair of the joint chamber and was burned and renovated, which is expected to be renovated by the People's Republic of China.
I met with His Excellency Chairman Zhao Lihi, Chairman of the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress, China's legislative body. He is also a member of the Politburo Standing Committee and falls behind President Xi Jinping and Secretary General of the Chinese Communist Party, making him the third most senior leader in China. We had a friendly dinner, and while at the dinner, I made a request for the repair of the joint chamber that got burned and the renovation of the offices in the Capitol building. He immediately requested the presence of the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of China, and in the presence of the Liberian ambassador to China and I. He instructed the inclusion of my request to projects approved for Liberia. I also met with Mr. Shen Zandong, chairman of the China International Development Cooperation Agency. The agency is in charge of foreign aid, and the project requested for the legislature was also highlighted in the meeting by both of us. Also, the request for scholarships and exchange programs for legislative staffers were also approved. Today, I will turn over a report to the Committee on Foreign Affairs to continue the processes and communication regarding.
She is Senate Pro Tempore Yombli Kanka Lawrence there speaking. What if you just joining us with the time half past the hour? You are listening to King's News, run the 45 minutes news presentation about Liberia, Africa, and the rest of the world. Stories will follow in this evening. Liberia Drug Enforcement Agency arrests a 23-year-old woman in connection with the sale of kush at the dollar market on Bushrow Island. LDA says the suspect is ongoing investigation at its headquarters. Campus-based student unification party at the University of Liberia petitions the Ministry of Youth and Sports to immediately suspend all activities related to the upcoming elections of the Federation of Liberian Youth following allegations of institutional malpractices. The House of Senate announces plan at the People's Republic of China to fund the renovation of the joint chamber of the Capitol building and several legislative offices that were affected during the December arson attack. Away from Liberia top opposition politician arrested days before Tanzania election. Dozens killed in Nigeria fuel tanker explosion. We are taking another short break and we'll come back. We continue with more forces on the Welcome. On this one, ahead of the United Nations 80th anniversary, UN resident coordinator in Liberia, Martin Christian Yumotonin, has reaffirmed the United Nations' continued commitment to supporting Liberia's development priorities. The UN resident coordinator highlighted both notable progress and ongoing challenges in Liberia's journey toward achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. She informed reporters at MICAD press briefing on Tuesday about notable achievements in reducing under 5 mortality, increasing access to clean water, and expanding school feeding programs, training Liberia's SDG index score as moderate, but with marked progress.
And Liberia will use it to amplify African voices, priorities, and solutions. I know there is a lot of work on promoting youth, women, peace, and security, but also promoting peace, security, and prosperity in general. We are proud of Liberia's contributions to peace building, climate action, youth empowerment, democratic governance, and so on. The recent elections in this country and peaceful as they were, and the peaceful transfer of power is always being quoted as a good example, not only in the region, but also in Africa. So Liberia is not defined by its past wounds, but its present strength is what defines Liberia. So Liberia's index score of SDGs is moderate in progress, with notable achievements and reduce in under 5 mortality, some increase in clean water, expanding in school feeding programs, and so on. But we know that challenges remain in poverty reduction, gender equality, infrastructure, climate resilience, and so on for all of us to achieve the SDGs. This is a time of recommitment of the UN that we will continue to work together with Liberia to close the gaps and to build on the progress already made. I know that 2 of the SDG targets are somehow on track, a reduction of under 5 mortality, and also access to clean water and enrollment.
Reflecting on the ongoing cooperation between the United Nations and the government of Liberia, Matan Yumotoni noted that the current cooperation framework centered around 4 key pillars: human development and sexual services, sustainable economic development, peace and security, and good governance is coming to an end this year. She further emphasized the importance of shaping a more inclusive and digitally responsive multilateral system. The UN resident coordinator, Madam Christian Yumotoni, reflected on 8 years of strong partnership between Liberia and the United Nations and the world as the world prepared to commemorate the United Nations Day on October 24th.
It's a privilege to stand before you today, as this month we mark a historical milestone, 8 years of the United Nations and 8 years of Liberia partnership with the UN. We are privileged again that this year the main UN Day event on the 24th of October will be celebrated in Kakata, Magidi County. This is important because celebrations will be done with the people in the communities. The events that have been going on throughout the month are numerous, and I will mention a few.
She is Christine Yumotoni, the UN resident coordinator in Liberia. They're speaking. A presidential aspirant in the upcoming elections of the Reporters Association of Liberia, Barclay Canley, has pledged to audit the institution's past leadership if elected. Canley says the proposed audit is part of a broader initiative aimed at promoting transparency and accountability within the organization. Speaking to King's FM on Wednesday, Canley outlined his team's reform agenda, which he believes is essential for the institutional advancement of the RAL. He criticized both the past and current leaders of the association for allegedly neglecting the welfare of journalists across the country.
The first step to accountability is to audit the past leaderships, meaning the CCR leadership, that is the way they took past leadership.
Okay.
These two leaderships will be audited. We want to know because there were misappropriation of funds under the CCR Clark, the current police spokesperson. Under her leadership, there was some misappropriation of funds, and we expected Willie to address some of these issues. So we expected him, under his leadership, to maybe establish a committee like what the PUL did to address those concerns, but we didn't see anything of such, and we can rest assured. Now we are cognizant of the fact that there was an investigation, and who was the head of that investigation? It was the former director of Prime FM, now the head of communication at the Ministry of Justice. He was the head of that investigation. They investigated regarding that entire corruption saga and what have you. He got a report, and that report was released. So probably we'll have to call him to get hold of this report so that we can address this we can lay to rest this entire. Because I've always said the media will hold people to high standard. We hold people when it comes to the issue of allegation of corruption. So we can't be the same people while we holding people say public officials they are corrupt, they are doing it. Then the same thing happening. In the same media that we're holding people accountable. We can't be the almost like you want to be the referee or you want to be the player, all that kind of thing. If we want to be people who which you they say he who comes to equity should come with clean hands. So when you want to criticize somebody, the first thing is to get your backyard clean, because nobody want to take it serious now. If you say, oh, okay, let's talk about corruption. They say, but your 2000 missing. They say your president, your former president, 2000. Your former president.
He's a presidential aspirant in the upcoming elections of the Reporters Association of Liberia. Barclay, kindly speaking. The executive director of the National Commission on Disabilities in Liberia, Samuel Dean, has termed the allegations leveled against him by some visually impaired persons as false, malicious, and politically motivated. On Tuesday, several visually impaired persons staged a protest in Monrovia, calling for the immediate dismissal of Samuel Dean, CEO of the National Commission on Disabilities in Liberia, for his alleged involvement into institution financial mismanagement. However, addressing a news conference in Congo Town at the headquarters of the National Commission on Disabilities Wednesday, Samuel Dean denied all allegations made against him by members of the commission.
Ladies and gentlemen of the press, fellow Liberians, I address you today not in defense of a title, but in defense of truth, integrity, and a sacred duty entrusted to me by the people of Liberia. Yesterday's demonstration at the gates of the executive mansion, led by a handful of blind street beggars, was not a protest. It was a performance choreographed by extortionists and political opportunists, designed to smear a reputation built on service, sacrifice, and unwavering commitment to the disability community. Let me be unequivocally clear. Here. The allegations levied against me are all false, malicious, and politically motivated. Chief among them is the claim that I mismanaged 200,000 allegedly donated by the president. That is a lie. There was no personal donation from President Boyka. The funds in questions were allocated through the Public Sector Investment Program, PSIP, by the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning to support the National Commissions on Disabilities Economic Empowerment Grant Scheme. This initiative was not a handout. It was a blueprint of transformation. It was successfully rolled out across 5 counties: Monserrato, Bong, Nima, Lufa, and Grand Bassa. Under 4 strategic pillars: entrepreneurship, skill training, agribusiness, and financial aid for students with disabilities and those whose parents are persons with disabilities. The program was monitored, evaluated, and broadcasted live for the Ministry of Finance to witness. We passed with flying colors. We succeeded in this program.
To facilitate our outreach, a project vehicle was procured, not a personal vehicle.
He is the Chief Executive Director of the National Commission on Disabilities in Liberia, Samuel Dinde, speaking. And away from Liberia, a senior official of Tanzania's main opposition party has been arrested amid a crackdown on dissenting voices ahead of next week's general election. John Hishi, deputy chairperson of Chidima, was detained while attempting to attend a tracing trial of party leader Tondu Lisu. In a statement, Chidima alleged the government planned to arrest senior party leaders and detain them until after the elections, which will take place on 29th October. The government has not responded to this accusation. Chidima said Hishi has apprehended as he arrived at the High Court in Dar es Salaam on Wednesday. The party also alleged that Hishi is being transported to Tarimin, a northern town more than 1,300 kilometers, 820 miles away from Dar es Salaam. And at least 42 people have been killed in an oil tanker explosion in Nigeria's central Niger state after the vehicle skidded off the road and crashed, spilling fuel, and 8 workers has told the BBC. Another 52 people with varying degrees of injuries are currently receiving treatment at the hospital, said Abdullahi Baba Ara, head of Niger State Emergency Service. Villagers rushed to collect fuel from the overturned tanker, which suddenly exploded, setting off massive fire that engulfed them. Tanker explosions are a recurring tragedy in Nigeria, despite repeated warnings about the dangers of collecting spilled fuel. On that note, this is how I like to go home this evening on this edition of the program King's Newsroom, a 45-minute news presentation about Liberia, Africa, and the rest of the world. But just before we go home this evening, let's remind you of stories we've been following. Liberia Drug Enforcement Agency arrests a 23-year-old woman in connection with the sale of kush at the Douala Market on Bushra Island. LDA says the suspect is undergoing investigation at its headquarters. Campus-based student unification party at the University of Liberia petitions the Ministry of Youth and Sports to immediately suspend all activities related to the upcoming elections of the Federation of Liberian Youth following allegations of institutional malpractices. The House of Senate announces plan by the People's Republic of China to fund the renovation of the Joint Chamber of the Capitol building and several legislative offices that were affected during the December arson attack. And away from Liberia, top opposition politician arrested days after Tanzania election. And still on foreign development, dozens killed in Nigeria fuel tanker explosion. These are stories to follow here this evening on King's Newsroom. Sam Andrews was here with the news bulletin, while Frank Diallo Swen sat at controls and coordinated the sound. I would like to say many thanks to all of our reporters, correspondents, news editors who helped in making this package. Sources, my name is Newton Tokpa. Thanks for listening and watching. Bye-bye.